does due diligence play in a commercial transaction?
Okay, good question about due diligence. Really, due diligence is a period of time that's written into the contract to where a buyer has the opportunity to really inspect the property, the financials, the numbers, the paperwork, and to really request a bunch of detailed stuff from the seller. It's that period of time to where when you first look at a property, you make some assumptions about the property. And you then make an offer based on those assumptions. Now, they give you some information, but you're always making some assumptions because you really don't want to spend money on a property until you know if the seller is willing to sell at your price. So you make a few assumptions, you make an offer on the property, and let's assume the seller accepts it. Once that acceptance occurs, there's a period of time that's written into the contract called a due diligence. And it can be 30 days, 45 days, 60 days. It needs to be long enough for you then to get inspectors on the property to verify the assumptions you made. If you thought you could do the roof for $20,000, you want to get a roofer over there to get a quote and actually make sure it was $20,000. If you have their and it's also your time to request specific financial information from the seller, insurance binder with a history of any losses or payments that they made on the property. You may get tax records, copy of his mortgage possibly, but there's a whole bunch of stuff, including copies of all the leases, rent rolls. You may get estoppel certificates, which is where they're going and actually questioning the tenants to verify that the lease is a legitimate lease. But there's a whole bunch of work that happens during that, and some of it costs you money as a buyer. For example, you may have to hire an inspector. It may cost you $1,500 to have somebody go look at a property or more. But that report then makes you feel good or bad about the property, but it should give you a sense that your assumptions were hopefully reinforced and correct. If they're not, that's your time to cancel. The due diligence period has an out where you cancel the contract, you get your earnest money back less a very small amount, usually $100, but it's written in there and it can be more. So you got to make sure you know what you're signing when you go sign a contract. It's not a guaranteed $100, but it gives you that kind of get out of jail free card in general to really go the next step with the property and decide, is it right? If you think of a dating analogy, it's kind of like a first date. You've asked a girl out, she's accepted, you're in the car now and you're going out and you're deciding, maybe that's not a good analogy. We'll cut that part out.
We'll play with it.
Anyhow, that's the due diligence. It's that period of time for you to make sure the property is everything you thought it was.
Sounds like a good reason to have a realtor.
Absolutely.
What part do you play as in representing a possible buyer that really makes this time period essential?
Good question. The realtor's role in the due diligence on the front end is writing the contract with enough time in there to get the property inspected and get all the work done that's necessary. The realtor also acts as intermediary, getting all the information from the seller or the seller's agent, assembling a binder of information and making sure it's done in a timely fashion. You can't wait till the last day of due diligence to get the information because then the buyer doesn't have a time to inspect it or look at it enough. The realtor also then negotiates if there's a change in the contract or if there's a change in time needed. The realtor mediates that and gets that done. A big part that the realtor does is if there is a problem with the property, that let's say a roof, let's say that the buyer thought the roof was in great shape and when the inspector looked at it, it needs a brand new roof today and the roof costs $25,000. Well, the realtor may suggest or may say, why don't we ask the seller to pay that as part of our closing and effectively put the property back to where we had thought it was when we made the offer and correct a problem that needs to be corrected. So the realtor acts as that kind of calming voice of reason that walks the process through. And when there's even a problem, it's also an opportunity, maybe an opportunity to get a new roof in this case.